introduce ourselves first. I'm Amanda and I'm the team leader and manager of the Birth Centre.
I'm Natalie, I'm the childbirth GP midwife and midwife here for postnatal care and births and home births.
And my name is Trudy, I'm the midwife for blocks and surgery and for Norton.
So today we thought that we were going to talk about recognising when you're in labour and when to call a midwife. So we've already spoken about home birth, positions in labour, water birth, decision making, hormones for labour and non-pharmaceutical labour aids in our previous videos. So we thought that this would be quite a good one to do, because a lot of women actually think that they're in labour when they're still in kind of like the early phases, and they come into the unit or they're a little bit too early and then they're sent home. So hopefully our objective is that it will give you a little bit more knowledge that as soon as you have a contraction or a surge or a wave, whatever you'd like to call them, you don't necessarily have to jump in the car and go wherever you're planning to have your baby. So we thought that what we would do is that we'd start with the signs of labour. So Natalie, do you want to?
Yeah, I can kick off. It looks like we've got some viewers. Can you hear us? Can anyone let us know that you can hear us well? Somewhere in the questions. I'll carry on. Hopefully somebody will answer us. So yeah, it's those initial signs really, things that you may not expect, things that you might have read about, things that might come completely unexpectedly to you. So things like a show, things like backache, your water's breaking, or tightenings. So it's all those things that we're going to explore today really.
Yeah.
Start off with
so we'll start off with a show. A show is the Mucus Plug, which if we have got some props here, which I hope that you can see. So the show, when you're actually, is the Mucus Plug, and it's actually sitting just in the opening of your cervix. Now, when your body is getting ready to go into labour, your cervix, which when it's not ready for labour, it's a bit like your nose, it's as hard as your nose, but as it starts to ripen and get ready for labour, it starts getting really soft, and it goes as soft as your earlobe. And because the fact it's softening, that opening will open a little bit and release your show. So that's the mucus plug, and it looks like mucus, and it can have a few streaks of blood in it. Now, it actually, statistically, they say that it usually can come away about 48 hours before you go into labour, but it has been known to actually come away 3 weeks before you go into labour. So you can phone and tell your midwife, and because it is an indication that, you know, labour is going to happen sometime soon, but it's not necessary if you don't feel like, you know, phoning the midwife. It's not necessary to tell us. It's just, you know, kind of like showing that your body is actually getting ready for labour.
Positive sign.
Yeah, a positive sign. So, so that's the show. Not everybody has a show. So don't think, you know, you're in labour and you haven't had a show and you think, oh gosh, I can't be in labour because I haven't had a show. Some women don't have a show, or they have it during their labour. Usually they have it during their labour when it comes away. So, but like I'm saying, some people can have it about 3 weeks before they actually go into labour.
And it can be different for everybody. So for some people it can be a big obvious show, a big, you know, ball of gloop or mucus, and for other women it can be on wiping for a day or two. For other women, you know, as Amanda says, they don't get a show at all.
And it can be different colours as well, can't it? So
Yeah.
it could be a clear colour, it could be pinky, streaked with pink, or sometimes even a little bit bloody, if, especially if you've had a membrane sweep or some examination.
So, so that's that show. And another indication can be that you start getting backache. The backache, it's different because obviously sometimes women get backache when they're getting a urinary tract infection, but this is, you know, it just comes on and it's just achy. Again, it's just an indication that you might be going to labour. It doesn't mean that you are in labour if you get you know, continuous backache. Anything else to add about backache?
Yeah, also, oh sorry, go on.
Oh no, I was going to say, quite often that will be with the same time as getting some period-like pains.
Yes.
That's just a sign that, another sign that things have
Come and
changed.
join us, Stevie. No. Come and join us. Lots of you will probably know Stevie, our lovely Witchwood midwife. Come and join us, Stevie. So, also we're talking about backache. Also, some women can feel, Stevie's got us on live, some women can feel that kind of lightening or pressure down below as baby's starting to engage or move down to the pelvis as well. And we might have talked about it in previous videos about hormones, but the hormone relaxing will help everything soften and help baby to engage into your pelvis. So you might feel aches and pains in your pelvis as well.
So the other thing that can happen is that you have loose stools, because the body is so amazing. It kind of like gets preparation, gets lots of room. So this is Stevie. She's a Witchwood.
There we go.
You
Let's
are
move
right.
this. There you go.
Well, no, because
Oh, well, we were trying to see the questions, but I don't know if there aren't any, or we just can't see them.
So yes, the loose stools, that can be an indication that they're going to labour, because it's basically your body getting cleared out before you go into labour. And then there's your waters breaking. Now, the thing about your waters breaking, sometimes your waters break before you go into labour, sometimes they break whilst you're in labour, and sometimes they don't break at all and your baby's born in the actual bag, which is supposed to be lucky. So we have had women who have actually been in strong labour waiting for their waters to break and haven't contacted us, and then ended up having their babies at home because they've been waiting for their waters to break. So what I'm trying to say, your waters can break at any point, or the baby can actually be born in the bag. Now, we've got a little picture of the baby here. So the baby's in a bag of waters. Now, sometimes what happens is that you get a little hole in the bag in front of the baby's presenting part. And if that happens, then it's as they do it on the TV, the water's just absolutely everywhere. Because there's over half a litre of water in there. So a lot of water comes out. Sometimes, however, you can get a little hole behind the baby's head, and then this is what we call a hind water leak. So you just get the odd little gush, and you think to yourself, you might have wet yourself, because I'm sure that you're aware that when you're heavily pregnant and you can see this baby squashing the bladder, or if you've got some urine in there and the baby just gives it a little nudge, women can have a little accident. So some women think that little gush is them having a little accident. So what we then recommend that you actually put on a pad and see if it keeps on happening. And if it keeps on happening, it's most likely to be a hind water leak. Now, if you think your waters have broken, you must contact where you're planning to have your baby. So if you're planning to have your baby here or at the home under our team, then you contact us. If it's at night, then you'd phone Wallingford, and then they contact the midwife on call. If you're having a baby at the Spires, you'd phone the Spires. If you're having a baby on the labour ward, then you would phone the maternity assessment unit. The other things to say about the waters, to differentiate from urine, is that it does have a different smell. It's got quite a sweet smell. I mean, urine's quite a bitter smell, but it's quite a sweet smell. I think it smells a bit like pancake batter, personally. And also its colour. So the colour of the water, it can be clear, it can be slightly pinky, it can be like very, very dilute urine, because the baby actually weaves into it. It can be green. If it's green, then you would definitely be invited to go straight into to see one of the midwives. But if it's one of the other colours, then we do need to see. But there's no, if you're not having any contractions or surges, then there's no rush. But we do need to know that you've actually your waters have actually gone, because then we have recommendations to follow. This is after 37 weeks. If you're before 37 weeks and you think your waters have broken, you need to phone the maternity assessment unit, because that's premature. Like the baby's not that term, so you need to phone the maternity assessment unit, and they'd advise you should go in. So does somebody want to talk about the recommendations if your waters are broken?
Volunteering you. We can
We have the recommendations that between 18 and 24 hours after your water's break, if you are in labour, then we'll be recommending that we offer you intravenous antibiotics. So unfortunately, we're not able to do intravenous antibiotics at the birth centre here, but you could then opt to have those to have that at the Spires in the John Radcliffe, which is the midwifery-led unit in Oxford.
So that's as a precaution if your waters have been gone for a prolonged amount of time. Usually most women go into labour within 24 hours of their waters breaking, but it's not always the case.
And also, if your waters are broken and you haven't laboured, I mean, as Trudy was saying, the recommendation is that if you've gone over 18, 24 hours, then you have had the antibiotics. But if you haven't had your baby, the recommendation is that you're left to hopefully have your baby spontaneously for 72 hours. So between 36 and 72 hours, you'd be offered to get your labour going on, because obviously the longer your waters are broken, because obviously when the baby's in the bag, they're protected from infection, but when there's a hole in the bag, then the longer you've got the hole, the more likely there is going to be infection, or might come, and it's still not that common, but it's as a precaution, because obviously we don't want you or the baby to get an infection. So women, if they don't go into labour after up to 72 hours, they will have an appointment to go to the labour ward, and they will get the labour going, the hormone drips. So, but obviously you're very much involved in the conversation and the decision making, because everything, this is all the recommendations, you're very much involved in what you want to do, because some women decide actually their waters are broken and they'd like to get their labour going as soon as they can. There's different pathways, but this is just to give you a bit of an overview of what we offer. And then the next thing is about the contractions, or the surges, or the waves, whatever you like to call them. When you, a lot of people will say, oh gosh, it's really painful, how strong is the pain? Some people don't actually find it painful. Pain's a perception. Some people find that it's extremely painful. Some people find actually it's not too bad. But what I always say, if you think it's going to be extremely painful, what you're going to get, you're going to have that expectation. Now, being in labour is actually a positive thing. I always think pain is when you've broken your arm or you've stubbed your toe. It's something you want to go away. Actually, to have having your baby, it's feelings that you've never, sensations that you've never experienced before, if it's your first baby, and it's intense. But I always say to put a different label on it, like intense stretching or intense tightening or something like that, because pain is something that people are frightened of, and we don't want you to be actually frightened of labour. It's something to rejoice. Some women really enjoy the experience, and other people don't. But it's about keeping your mind open and flexible. And if you watch the previous video that we did, when we looked at non-pharmaceutical techniques to help you relax, that's a really good follow-up, really, to this video. I don't know what we call it, live.
Yeah, and it's just trying to encourage you to not be scared and work with your body, and actually the more tense you become or the more scared, then you're knocking off your oxytocin and not working with your body. So it's trying to perceive the tightenings as a positive.
So what we want to look at now really is the type of surges, because when you go into spontaneous labour, usually especially with your first baby, they come slowly and gradually, and they're a little bit irregular and erratic. You might have some strong ones, you might have some not so strong, some last long, some don't last long. And these contractions or surges, they're actually doing stuff on your cervix and opening slowly and softening it, but it's not what we call established labour. And for some women, this can go on for hours and hours, and sometimes even days, to be honest with you. For some, But we're going to talk about when you are in established labour, when you expect those to be the timing of those. But the best place, if you're in what we call it latent phase of labour, but early labour, the best place is for you to be at home, pottering around, sleeping, relaxing, watching television, having a bath, trying to ignore what's actually going on in your body. We really encourage you to relax, because when you're in established labour, obviously, well, in first times, statistically they say that they last for about 12 hours in established labour, and in second babies and subsequent babies, it's usually about 6 or less. So, obviously it's quite hard work, so you want to be resting in the latent phase. But we really, if you come in or if a midwife, if you're having home birth, comes to see you and thinks that you're not in established labour, or if you come to us and you're not in established labour, or to the John Radcliffe, you will be encouraged to go home. And the reason why you're encouraged to go home, because obviously we don't know how long it's going to... I could say obviously, don't I? Maybe it's not obvious. Maybe it's not obvious. But research shows that you're more likely to have intervention if you go in and you're not in established labour. But obviously, but if you're struggling, then obviously we'll put a plan in place. But if you're not in strong established labour, it's best to stay at home, because it starts playing with your psyche when you're in this kind of like environment. Women start thinking that they're in really good, strong, established labour, and they're not. And then when they are examined and they found that they're not as far as they think they are, they get really demoralised, and then they obviously, no, they don't obviously. Then they quite often end up, deciding to have intervention, because they've used all their resources. Tired, they've used their resources.
The things you can be doing at home are things like resting, like Amanda said, refuelling. So, like I always say to women, if you were planning on running a marathon tomorrow, what would you be doing today? You'd be resting, you'd be staying well hydrated, you'd be making sure your nutrition levels are really high, so you'd be eating things that would give you lots of energy going forward. So it's all very similar things for labour, really, just making sure your body's well prepared mentally and physically. Relaxing, getting your oxytocin flowing, and just generally not putting too much pressure on yourself to kind of will labour on. Just work with your body and relax, and it will happen.
And I think sometimes it's being not disappointed. You will feel disappointed, but sometimes your body has been working really hard, and although you're not in established labour, your body has been changing, and your cervix has been shortening, and it's been getting ready for established labour. So, you have been doing everything right, and your body knows what it's going to do, but sometimes it just takes a little bit longer than you're expecting it to.
It's different for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and in actual fact, some women, they go straight into established labour.
Yeah.
And this quite often happens when women have had a long first-time labour. They actually have an expectation that their subsequent labours are going to be long, and they get caught out, and they happen really quickly. So, talking about established labour, when your surges are coming, when you're getting a surge, you can time them about every 3 minutes, and they're lasting a good 50 to 60 seconds, and you're really having to concentrate on relaxing. Those are the established labour, and that's when it really starts working on your cervix and really opening you up. So yes, so if you started, you kind of like, I don't know, doing some washing, and suddenly the surges kicked in and they started coming every 3 minutes, and they're really, really strong. You actually have to move, because we do have some women who, even first births, have very quick labours. So the trouble is that you don't know which one you're going to be. We do find that when babies are need to do a little bit more work because we talked previously about how the babies have to negotiate the pelvis. So if the baby has to do a little bit more negotiation, those labours tend to be longer. If the baby's in a position when they're just they're ready to just come out, those tend to be the ones that are quicker. So yes, but the thing to say is that you phone your midwife, and we will guide you, and we will advise you as to whether we think, because we've talked to a lot of obviously a lot of we talked to a lot of labouring women, and we can actually tell quite a lot from the telephone calls. So we actually prefer to talk to the women. Quite a lot is the birth partner phones up, but we can get so much more information from talking to the women. So ideally, if you can actually phone yourself or your partner phone and then say, right, she's on the phone, and then we can talk to you, because we can do quite a lot of assessments. And quite often what happens is we ask a question and the partner then has to turn to the mum and say, is this happening? And then he comes back and it just prolongs everything. So yeah. Anybody got any comments to make?
That could be quite difficult if you're hypnobirthing, couldn't it? But it still would be better if we could speak to you on telephone.
Even if it's just during the time. Often, even if we just have to have a minute of silence on the phone, it's actually far nicer to see how you're coping and dealing with things at the time. So it can be a joint effort between you and birth partner of the phone call with us, and we take as long as we need to establish what's going on over the phone.
Yeah.
So have we said about when they need to make that phone call? No, we haven't. We sort of move on into lots of different areas, don't we? And one thing leads to another. So everyone's always going to say, well, when do I need to phone you? Or, when should I contact whoever I need to contact? So it's really difficult because we were saying everybody's going to be very different and have a different experience. But as a guide, we're going to sort of use the number of contractions and how often they're coming and how long they're lasting. That seems to work for us anyway, doesn't it? And just as a guide, but everyone again will be different, we're talking about having 3 contractions or surges in 10 minutes, lasting between about 45 to 60 seconds.
And it's the regularity of that pattern really. So if that's just been happening for 10 minutes, then hold fire a little bit and just keep timing. But if that's been a regular pattern that you're consistently getting good length contractions and a good pattern, then that's always a good indicator.
And it's usually quite a gradual increase, isn't it, in the number of contractions and the frequency of them. So you do tend to sort of feel that they are getting more intense as they get longer and closer together.
But yeah, if you're at the point where you feel you need to time them because you're just not really sure what's going on, if they're still irregular, so if you're having one every 2 minutes, one every 5 minutes, one every 7 minutes, one every 3 minutes, irrelevant of whether they are lasting a minute, then that irregular pattern still tells us that it's probably still that early stage, and it's probably a really good idea to stay at home and follow all that advice about resting and eating and drinking and emptying your bladder and all those things. But if they are consistently 2 or 3 in a 10-minute period lasting a minute long, and they've been like that for however long, an hour or so, it might be the right time to call up. Or if what we were talking about before, your water's breaking as well as the contractions. So as Amanda says, if in doubt, call us and we'll point you in the right direction.
And your midwife hopefully will have talked you through all of these things that we're talking about and given you the telephone numbers, contact numbers of the person that you need to call. And I think Amanda just mentioned at the beginning, but all the numbers will be in the front of your handheld notes or just on the first page. But just check with your midwife if you're not sure.
Yeah, I think that's. Is there anything else to add?
I think too much show.
Yeah, the thing I was thinking about was when we talk about the waters, because sometimes it's really difficult to know whether your waters are gone if you just got a little bit of a leak. And there is something that we do sometimes see where there's a lot of fluid in the cervix towards the end of the pregnancy. And so sometimes you notice maybe if you're wearing a panty liner that that can be quite damp or quite wet. But if your waters had gone, then it would be soaking through a pad. That's why we would say, well, can you pop a pad on and then check it in a couple of hours? I'll be back in a minute.
And a lot of women get increased discharge at the end of pregnancy as well because of hormonal changes. So if you're in any doubt, then just pop a pad on and speak to your local assessment unit or community midwife. they'll be able to give you some extra advice. We've been abandoned.
So are there any questions? Do you know?
Well, that's what I was trying to look at, whether we can look at questions. It says no questions. I don't know whether that's just what I can't see,
Can you see it
or
on the phone?
I'll have a little look. Let's see if I can go back to that.
So as when you're in the latent phase of labour, as we said previously, the cervix, the neck of the womb softens and it goes shorter. When you're in established labour, the cervix has shortened and then it really starts to open up. Have we got some questions?
Oh, here we go. Yeah. Oh yes, lovely people saying yes, I can hear you. Thank you. Oh, hello Charlotte. Okay, let's have a little look. Yes, get in touch, Charlotte. Okay. So Alessandra says, I'm 38 weeks. I don't have any contractions yet. It's my first baby. How long should I start from home to get to the JR? She lives in Banbury. How am I going to understand when it's the right time to come? So hopefully we've discussed that a little bit in terms of that strong regular pattern of tightenings. And often people do worry, especially because we cover quite rural areas, about worrying about that distance and how to make sure they don't have a baby in the car on the way to the hospital or the birth centre. And actually your oxytocin sometimes can work in wonderful ways that at that moment where you are really having to focus on something like the journey or getting in the car, your oxytocin can sometimes knock off, and that's sometimes why when you arrive at a unit for assessment, your tightenings might not be as regular as they were at home. And that's because we know home is doing a wonderful thing in terms of making you relaxed. The journey can sometimes either knock off your tightening slightly or hold things off a little bit until you arrive somewhere and then you relax again and then things will start up again. But yeah, if you're in any doubt and you're getting that strong regular pattern and you feel it is the right time to go in, then just call where you're having your baby and they'll be able to give you some further advice. What other questions? Let's have a little look. My first child was born within 5 hours of waters breaking and 4 hours from first contraction. What can I now expect with my second?
Probably it to be a bit quicker.
Yeah. Don't drive or have access to a car and don't want to birth at home. So yeah, so just be really cautious in that respect. You know, if you obviously have a plan for childcare and have your bags packed and ready, and you know, when people call up and say it's not my first baby, you know, we will often invite them in pretty soon if they say they're having a regular pattern and they're feeling like it's the right time to come in. So don't be worried that you'll get put off. You know, if you really feel like you want to come in and you're anxious or your first labour was relatively quick, then you know, just be clear about that on the phone and we'll invite you in.
And it depends where you're having your baby. Really,
It does,
doesn't it?
Because
yeah.
we quite often, so it's, if somebody's had a history of a quick labour and they're niggling around, they'll quite often come in and
Maybe,
just
yeah.
potter
And
about.
we'll just keep them here for a couple of hours and make them comfortable and see what happens.
But if you do feel the baby is coming, you know, if you don't think you're going to make wherever you're going to have your baby, you must stay. It's much better to stay at home and have it in the car. So if you feel that your baby is coming and you're not going to make it, you can either, if you think that the baby's definitely coming, you phone 999 and the paramedics will come, and you phone the community midwives and they will come and they will bring all the kit to your house. So yeah, if you think you're not going to make it, and I know you've said you don't want to have your baby at home, but better to have your baby at home than in transit.
Yeah.
So, and if the baby is coming and so quickly, and I don't want to escape, but it does sometimes happen that the baby's coming unexpectedly, it's about staying calm and just, you know, getting, and the baby comes out, just dry the baby off, put the baby skin to skin against your chest to keep the baby nice and warm, and wait for help to come. We don't have to worry about the cord or anything like that. That can wait until the midwife comes. So yeah, just keep the baby warm and try and stay calm.
And the operative from the emergency services, they will guide you through as well about what to do. And you'll just get a midwife and an ambulance. And if all's well, you can stay at home. And if for any reason we need to transfer you when we can. Any other questions? Yeah, Charlotte, just give us a call. We can sort that out for you. Any other questions with regard to latent phase or early labour or what's happening in the body or when to call, anything like that? We could go through these pictures a little bit more if that's helpful. So these are ones that Amanda touched on earlier. So see how we can get this up here. So this is a closed cervix. Oh, can't find where it is on here. This is a closed cervix, so a non-labouring cervix. Just to visualise it, if, for some people that helps. This is a not very good at this with the camera. There we go. So this is a there we go. This is a cervix that may just be starting to make some changes. Here we go. Keep going all the way. So it started to really thin and soften and open, but that might be a cervix that's in the latent or early stages of labour. No more questions. And ones have I covered? And that one. And last but not least, maybe you can see it. There. So a cervix that's pretty much disappearing there. You can just see the last little edges around the top of the sac of waters there. So a cervix that's well dilated and you'd be in established labour at that point. So yeah, it's all about thinking about how you can aid yourself to stay at home, stay relaxed, help work with your body until you get that nice, strong, regular pattern of tightenings and you are ready to go in and get some additional support from the midwives.
I think quite often, if you're not sure whether you're in established labour or early labour, it's quite, if you have a bath, it's quite good actually to go in the bath, because what tends to happen is that your surges slow down when you're in early labour, when you go in the bath. If they don't slow down, that's usually an indication that you're in established labour. So, that's just something that you can do. So yeah, that's our presentation really, isn't it?
Any more questions? Have a look. Can you repeat the contraction times for a first-time mum and when we should ring? So we're looking really for a strong regular pattern. So for a first-time mum, you'd expect established labour, so that point of having that strong regular pattern and your cervix having made some changes. So roughly from about 4 centimetres, you'd expect your labour to be around 12 hours, and then subsequent labours maybe half of that or less. And so it's looking for that strong regular pattern, and then knowing that that might be the right time to call in. And that could be 2 or 3 contractions in a 10-minute period, lasting about a minute long. But it's that strong regular pattern. So for some women that might be 2 contractions in 10 minutes, for some women that might be 4 contractions in 10 minutes, but it's that point where they become regular. Do you want to add to any of that?
So yeah, so it's about summarising when to call your midwife. If you think your waters are broken, when you're having regular contractions, I have to say, if you're having a baby at one of the MLUs, the rural freestanding MLUs or a home birth, we do actually like to know if you're doing things, not necessarily to be seen at that point, but when you're in early labour, just so that we've got a bit of an idea, so we can plan our workload. I mean, if you don't, it doesn't matter, someone will come to you, but it just gives us a bit of a
bit of a heads up.
Yeah, exactly.
There's another question about epidural. Is this possible, and when would that be done? Please could you explain a bit more? So epidural is available at the John Radcliffe delivery suite, and that is a potential option that we've discussed a little bit more in our other videos as well, but that's an option for women that are in established labour and feel like they need something stronger to help them, and that would be done by an anaesthetist at a point when you're in established labour. And your baby is happy, and we know that from doing a CTG monitoring. So there's lots of factors to take into account before an epidural would be administered, and that, as I say, would be at the hospital.
Yeah, they prefer to do it when you're in established labour, because sometimes they will do it if somebody's finding it very challenging when they're not in established labour on occasion, but it does really steeply increase your risk of having to have intervention the earlier you have your epidural. So it's just something that you need to be aware of.
And there's another question about what slows early labour down. So a good question, really. So as Amanda was touching on, sometimes getting in water can slow things down. So if you have a bath in early labour, that can be a wonderful source of relaxation. And if things kind of slow down a little bit in terms of the contractions, then often it is a sign that it is early labour. And after your bath, you should maybe try and have a sleep or eat, or almost try and ignore the fact that you're getting these tightenings until you have got a strong pattern. Other things that can slow down labour?
Changing location.
Yeah.
We are the only animals who actually leave our familiar nest and go somewhere, unfamiliar. So frequently it does happen that you come to your way of going to birth your baby and the contractions kind of like die down. And it does happen that sometimes, you have to really get comfortable there, and then they'll come back again. I mean, we are animals, so yeah, I'm familiar. Also, if you have people that you don't want at your birth, that's another thing that can actually delay things.
Yeah,
so say if you've got somebody who wants to be there that you don't particularly want to be there, although at the moment in COVID you can only home birth supporter, but it has happened in the past that we've had people coming to the birth and wanting to be there, and the person actually not wanting them to be there, and that's slowed things down. So you need to be in an environment that you can relax and you trust the people.
And that's why things like dim lighting and aromatherapy and things like that can be really helpful in terms of switching the mind to that more relaxed place.
Yeah.
And also that we see a lot of people that go into labour at night as opposed to the day, because that's when everything is then nice and quiet in the home, and maybe if you've got other children, the children have gone to bed or gone to grandparents, and then your body can then actually relax because it feels that it's a safe time. Because as Amanda said, we are mammals and we have those instincts that our body needs to be safe before you can actually deliver your baby.
And we do have quite often we do have women having home births, don't we? And it's when the children have gone to bed
Yeah.
that then they kick off, don't they?
I can vouch for that myself.
Yeah.
Any other questions at all? No, I don't think so.
So just going back to calling midwife, we said about with the waters break, when you're contracting regularly. Other things are, if you're worried about, and you will be asked this when you telephone, if you're worried that your baby's not been moving, if you're bleeding, so that's fresh blood, these are all reasons why, or you're worried or concerned.
If anything's out of the realms of normal for
Yeah.
you in your pregnancy, then don't hesitate to just pick up the phone, and that's why the assessment unit is 24 hours. But otherwise, if you feel everything's normal and things have just started, then hopefully we've given you a little bit more information about when the right time is to call. Can't see any more questions. Hello, lovely Leslie.
Yeah, and just being reassured that, this early is what we call the later phase, or you would call early labour, is a very normal thing, and it does sometimes take a long time with your first baby. But, your body is very clever, it knows what to do, and it is just trying to stay nice and focused and relaxed until your body's actually ready to be in established labour.
We've got a lovely image to talk you through, just to show you really, and feel free to take a screenshot or whatever. It tells you a bit more information there about where it's from. I'll see if I can get it all in. Oh yeah, I'm not very good at this, Charlie.
Can you get the picture bigger and then you'll be able to?
I'm not sure, I can't remember how to do that now. So you might be able to see it here, but it talks you through roughly the journey of labour. And the bottom bit is what we've been focusing on today. So it reiterates there all the things about rest, sleep, hydrate, empty your bladder. But it's a really lovely image of labour and the whole journey of labour. So feel free to take some screenshots of that. Quite often find it up on our wall here at Chippy as well. And hopefully we've covered a little bit today to help you in those phone calls. I don't know if there's any other. Don't think there's any other questions. No.
Well, that's it. Obviously, if any questions come up, you can always talk to your own midwife or give us a phone at the Cotswold Birth Centre. You're always happy to answer questions. But thank you for joining us. And so we do a live the first Monday of every month, so on different topics. So otherwise, Wendy Randall does question and answer times on other Mondays, and obviously there's the infant feeding team on Thursdays. So thank you for joining us, and we'll say bye. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.